Everett, welcome. How's it going, buddy? Give us some context. Who do you work with? What do you do?
Yeah, so my name's Everett Hoffman. I own a company called Everett Hoffman Functional Patterns Biomechanics Training with a whole array of people spanning from high school and D1 athletes all the way up to older folks with neurodegeneracy. And I help them improve their posture and structure and biomechanics, their walking gait. So usually it's to help people get out of pain and then also work with people that are looking to improve performance.
Sure, you're a bodyworker magician.
It's a lot of it's like sort of a combination between training and body work. So bodywork magician, I'll think.
So how can I specifically help you in our conversation today?
Yeah. So I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and the one about email lists and social media marketing and just that whole conversation in general is something that I know that I need to really do some work around. Personally, I don't really like using social media. I find it very distracting. I find it promotes a lot of comparison thinking in my head. And there have been times when I'm like, yeah, I really got to just get on there, do what you say. And I get there, I'm just I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it or who to say it to. And I just get stuck. And then all of the patterns of my brain just kind of come into play. And I'm like, not worth it. I have enough business. Business comes through me through other methods. I don't need this. And the headache that comes with it. So I'm just not going to do it. And it's something that I recognize is going to be really important for the growth of my business moving.
And listen, you're not alone. I felt the same way for a long time. In fact, two of my clients were the ones who pushed me onto Instagram years ago. I'm like, dude, I don't want to take pictures of my lunch and post everything I'm eating. They're like, it's not about that. Yeah. So it took me 6 years to eventually adopt social media. So I get where you're coming from. And a lot of people feel the same way. So you're not alone. So why, again, just coming back to your mindset, why do you feel that being on social and putting a little bit of effort into that is important for you and where you want to go?
So it feels like where a mature business person would towards in some sense. And also I see it as a realm of personal growth, just being able to interface with this technology without having it overwhelm me mentally and emotionally. I don't want to live with that forever. Yeah. I want to be able to effectively get onto social media, post a few things confidently, clear message, potentially even an offer and have that reach, if a sizable audience that I have access to, and then, just kind of have that be something that I can use to leverage my business moving forward. Up until I went to the Healthpreneur Live Summit, I was envisioning a future that was primarily brick and mortar. I'm partnering with a colleague of mine who's in a town near Boston where I am. And we were going to create sort of a regional facility together, brick and mortar it up with lots of additional add-on services, massage therapy, saunas, cold plunge, all that kind of stuff. And we were going to hire on other practitioners to do the work that we do. And we were going to shift into becoming business owners that way instead of just, staying solo, practitioners being self-employed with the job.
Is the goal now to move a little more of that focus instead of the brick and mortar to online?
So potentially hybrid. I was really inspired by my time there. I had limited experience with what your company had to offer before I went there. Yeah. I had watched the webinar, but hadn't really moved much further past that. And I was really brought there because I was curious about the AI component, because I see that as a really promising way to scale the work that we do, which is incredibly personalized and one-on-one. And I was like, how could I possibly scale that? But then, as I been playing with AI, I was like, I could record a setting, I could transcribe it, I could make a script out of it, and then make an audio file for that person with a few clicks. And that could be a really effective way to have them do the work that they do with me on their own and get better results. And that was everything that you guys were talking about, in terms of scaling a business and scaling impact and helping more people. And that is very meaningful to me. So yeah, long story short, some sort of hybrid model where I can work with people one-on-one if I want and have a community of practitioners to do that with, because that feels important to me personally as well, having that one-on-one, in person. But then also, I'm very, very, very seriously considering doing the HBA program to really build out the online offering as well. And if that's the case, I don't want to be stuck with the mindset that I have around social media when I'm jumping into that work.
So let's break this down a little bit, because HBA, like we have clients that don't even need to use social media and they want to just grow with paid ads, which is fine. And it's obviously you'll scale faster, but there's also a lot of, like, there's a huge advantage to having a social media following, right? Like if you look at, what do The Rock, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kylie Jenner all have in common? They have hundreds of millions of followers each, and they have massive, massive, massive personal brands, which has allowed them, like Cristiano Ronaldo makes $170 million in Saudi Arabia right now per year. The Rock has $1 billion tequila company and everything else he does. You don't, like, if no one knows you, you're not building $1 billion tequila company in the space of like no time, right? So there's a tremendous amount of value in having a following on social. I mean, everyone's on social media, so it's just like, it is what it is. The challenge is obviously just takes time. Right? It takes time. And I think the most important thing is what I'm gathering from your situation is just making the decision to say, like, I'm doing this and then committing to it. Right. So can you see my iPad here? I'm just kind of drawing a little bit of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So give me a sense of like where we're at now. So is Instagram the primary place where you're playing on social?
Yeah. That's, I mean, like I have about 1,000 followers so on over two accounts. So actually 1,000 on one and then 1,000 on the other. One of those is my personal brand, and then the other one is Functional Patterns.
Are they both on Instagram?
Both on Instagram.
Okay, cool. Okay, so one is biz, one's personal. Awesome.
Or more like my personal brand versus my identity as a practitioner of this.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And like roughly right now, like how often are you posting on a weekly basis?
Not at all. Zero
times per week. Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming there's probably not a lot of traction. Like
I get people every once in a while coming through with variable results. And that's another thing. Like when I was posting more regularly, I got a lot of like, kind of like, what I imagine you call low quality leads. And I had spent a lot of time talking to them. Nothing came out of it. And I was just like, I got kind of fed up with that whole process.
Yeah.
So I was like, why bother? It's much more effective to just
do nothing.
Just like let the word of mouth and the other like online presences that I have draw clientele to.
Yeah. And when I'll just put this down as so poor quality leads / convos, right?
Yeah.
Conversations. So the thing is, whether we're advertising or putting content out, it's usually like messaging that's going to appeal or repel certain people. Mm-hmm. So the good news is like, what the messaging kind of has been to some degree to attract potentially those people. And then you look at all those conversations as really good learning opportunities to say like, what was it about them that I didn't enjoy? What were they missing that I'm looking for? And then you start to really just work backwards with your messaging and even your Instagram profile to be a lot more clear about who it is you only want to be working with, right?
Yeah.
Like if you said, as an example, I only work with Hollywood celebrities, like don't even bother texting me, DMing me if you're not, like the likelihood that people DM you will be a lot less than if you just said, I help you get out of pain, right? I'm not saying that's what I'm saying, but just in general, right? You will also get people that slip through the cracks. Like, hey, like I know you work with actors. Like, could I slip in there too? You'll get people that kind of fall between the cracks, but generally our messaging is really the honey and the repellent at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. It should be appealing to the right people and repelling the wrong people. So it's all good. So if we're having this conversation like a year from now, where would you like how will you know when you're successful on Instagram or on social media?
I don't really have a very good frame of reference for that. In terms of just numbers, really the success metrics would be sort of more qualitative in some ways in terms of my relationship with the social media. And then in terms of quantitative is like the number of like high quality leads that I like draw in through social media, which has happened. It's just not a lot.
Yeah. And it's not unrealistic for that to be the case if we're posting 0 times a week, right? And I understand why you're doing that, because when you were posting a bit more frequently, you weren't getting what you were looking for. So you want to have better quality leads. You want to have a better relationship with social. So meaning how do you know when you've got a better relationship with that?
So I'll know that when I post something, I'm kind of like emotionally unattached to the outcome. Yep. And then also like when I'm not distracting myself, I have, some ADD-ish tendencies.
Welcome to the
Yeah.
When you combine entrepreneurial tendencies with social media, it's like not a good. It's like vinegar and baking soda sometimes.
And so it's just like when I'm on there, it's like I could like go there with the intention of looking up something useful and then just end up wasting a lot of time. I actually have like all sorts of like blockers installed on my phone that limits my use like to like 5 minutes at a time, which I could probably leverage into making a post and then getting out of there as quickly as possible. Yeah. So it's like being unattached to the outcomes and also just like having like better like mental processes that don't let my tendencies attack the use of my time.
Yeah. So you want to use the platform instead of the platform using you a bit more.
Right. It's like almost like I've read that it's designed to do that.
Oh, it's totally. Yeah. It's designed to hit those dopamine receptors and like, oh, let me just keep scrolling and let's see what's next. It's a challenge that I think everyone with a phone has to deal with. I think the nice thing about being a business owner is you can be a little bit more stealth with how you approach it. Mm-hmm. So I'll just give you a couple of things that have kind of principles that have helped me. So one is when I go onto my phone, mm-hmm. So if I look at principles here. So if I'm looking at Instagram specifically, number one is create, don't consume. So before I even log into Instagram, and am I perfect with this? No, because there's times where you can mindlessly just kind of go on the platform. But I want to catch myself as soon as I'm about to hit that Instagram button to be like, hey, Yuri, create, don't consume. Do you have something you're about to drop, or are you just going to mindlessly look at other people? Because if the intention is out of conditioning or habit or I'm just bored, that's never going to be anything good. So we always want to be intentional about what can I create here. So it doesn't have to be a post. It could be something in the stories, right? Like how can I add value to someone's life? Maybe just pop a story of something I'm doing right now. Like I'll just give you an example. So right now we're doing this interview. I can pop into stories on Instagram and be like, guys, what's going on? Having a cool interview here with my man, Everett, coming out on the YouTubes shortly. Stay tuned. So right there, I'm just going to post this as a story and that's done. So I've added a bit of value and I've also given people, that was pretty cool because we kind of did two things at the same time.
Be very meta.
Yeah, exactly. It's meta. Like we're in the matrix here. So the other thing is, so create, don't consume. And the other thing too that I've had to really work on, hopefully this serves you, is connect more than content. What I mean by that is how can we share stuff that is more of a connection piece than like, here are the 3 ways to do squats, right? Or here are like the top 2 ways to alleviate tight IT bands. Like that stuff has its place for sure. But what's powerful about social, and I would say specifically about Instagram, is that people want to get a little bit behind the scenes with you. So when I say connection, what I really think about here is like sneak peek type of stuff. And specifically here, I'm talking about in your stories. This is the stories and the ability for people to connect with you in stories is, I think, where the real power of Instagram is. And just by giving people an insight into what you're doing, it could be like you're about to head into the clinic. You got a busy day of patients. Maybe you're I'm just about to work on someone. They got some cool stuff going on. Now, obviously, you don't have to bring that person involved in that story, but just giving people a sense of like what the day looks like for you. Like, what is it like in Boston, right? Like, is it like just like, honestly, the thing I think that a lot of us health professionals struggle with sometimes is that we're very much like, how is this even valuable for someone?
Right.
Like, who cares? Everyone cares. Right. And the thing is, the bigger your following gets, the more of this behind the scenes stuff they want to see. They want to know, like, what are you doing in the morning? What are you doing throughout the day? Talk to me about a moment during the day where you felt like shit and you didn't feel like doing something. And it really connecting with people on that more personal level. And this, for me, has been one of the big things that I still want to do a better job of. And I see some friends in the space who do a tremendous job at this. They're very, very good at connecting with their audience in a way that the person watching their stories feels like they're speaking specifically to them. So those would be kind of the 2 high-level principles, at least that I operate from with respect to IG. Is that a good starting point? Actually, I'll give you one more. Lengthen time horizon. If you can use Instagram with, let's say you go into it, say, okay, starting today, I'm going to be more committed to this. And I do not care what comes from it in terms of business or whatever quantitative stuff for the next year. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to show up as me. I'm going to share my truth. I'm going to add value as much as I can. And I don't care what happens, because here's what happens with this is whenever we start something, and this is very important for starting something new, especially on social media where you can't get as quick a result as you can with paid traffic. when you're starting relatively small. Is the mistake that we often make is we post once and then the next post is a call to action. All right, guys, I gave you some value. Now it's time to work with me, right? And I see a lot of people do this. And it's like, don't even bother doing that. Play this game with the intention. If you think of, let's just use The Rock as an example. I don't know what that time frame looks like, but there was a time where I'm assuming The Rock didn't talk about anything other than his workouts, behind the scenes stuff, and his following just kept growing and growing and growing. And then he started dropping out some stuff he was doing with Under Armour or his tequila, but that was like years down the road. And I think if we take that long-term approach, especially with social media, what it allows us to do, it allows us to, if we think of two bank accounts or two buckets, like you have the goodwill bank accounts or like the deposits, and on this side, you have the ask accounts or the withdrawals. And why marketing in general gets such a bad rap is because where a lot of people spend a lot of their time is, and listen, I can be guilty of this too, is they spend a little bit too much time in the ask side of things. And what I'm suggesting to you here, so it's like, a little bit of value and it's like, hey, let's work together, whatever. What I'm suggesting here is for like the next year is just make it all about goodwill. Just deposit into the relationships. And if you never made an ask, you will get to the point where you will have people asking you, hey man, how do I work with you? That's the perfect scenario, right? That's like in a utopian world, you would never make an ask and like everyone's like, how do I work with you? But again, if you want to monetize this at some level, just make sure that it's minimal compared to the goodwill you're adding into the marketplace. Always want to add more value than we're asking for in return. If you take that approach, you will get better results. You'll build way more goodwill. You'll build more of a giving reputation, if you will, in the marketplace. And you will just overall your brand of like Everett Hoffman and anything else you're related to will just be at a higher level in terms of perceived value. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, that feels better to me as well. Like, I know that I have things of value to say and, I do have good lunches. So, it's like if I just like say good things and post pictures of my lunch and like give people that sort of behind the scenes look, maybe working with clients and stuff. Yeah, I can totally see how like if I don't focus on like generating business like for the first year and just really habituate myself to posting somewhat valuable content and that creates connection with people, that could be a good practice as well as like could produce good long-term results.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, like I'm not saying you should never make an ask. How much you want is up to you. What I would suggest is that the ask is in very small proportion relative to the amount of goodwill and value you're adding to people's lives, right? So when you look at the concern you had around like having a better relationship with social, kind of unattached from the outcome, when you take that longer term horizon, that's hopefully solves that. Because I talk with my kids about this, right? They have a YouTube channel and they're like, oh, how many new followers do I have? I'm like, guys, like, who cares? You're 12 years old, right? Just create videos because you love creating the videos. And when you're 20, I promise you'll have more subscribers, right? Like you're not building an empire at 12. Do it because you love doing it and you have something valuable to share with the world. If you keep doing that, regardless of what the outcome looks like, and you do it because you love it, you will win because you're doing something you love. And eventually the outcome will take care of itself. And so I think a lot of problems in business, especially online, is everyone's looking for like the stealth bomber attack. It's like, how do I get the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, right? I posted 5 times and nothing happened. Like, well, good. Post 5,000 more times and then wait some more, So anytime we can lengthen the time horizon, we'll make better decisions. We'll be generally, I think, happier with the process, assuming we go into it with that time horizon. And I think these are the 3 principles, for me at least, that have served me well. The thing I like about social too, and a lot of people watching this, or you even might be saying like, well, I thought you were against social media. I'm not against social. I'm like, there are times and places where it's very valuable, right? And I think if you're in a position of, for a lot of people watching this where they don't have the luxury to invest in ads or they don't have the risk tolerance to do so, social media is great. It's like, it really is, for us, it's a big play in our business right now because although advertising is amazing, this builds your brand for the future, right? Because when you have a following of people who want to hear from you, although it takes longer than advertising to get the result, this builds the most equity in your business because when you do have something to quote unquote sell to an engaged following, they will jump at the opportunity much more so than a cold audience who's never heard of you.
Right.
So the skill level to do advertising successfully is a little bit different. It's a bit more challenging than building a social media following. right? Building social media following just takes time. It takes just volume. And I think the benefit too is that it allows you to really figure out your message. Like every single time, every week, every month that passes by, you get more clarity around who you are, what you stand for, what you want to be known for. And that means what you post today is going to be good. What you'll post 10 months from now will probably be a lot better because you're clear about your articulation, your philosophy. You'll see what's working better than other things. And that's really, really valuable to do because you're essentially getting way more at-bats. Right? So you're building that repetition, you're building that skill. And so as a foundation, it's great because if you take that behavioral foundation and that mindset, and then down the road, you say, you know what, I'm ready to amplify and scale the business. You take that mindset into advertising with the same understanding that your first ad's not going to crush it probably. But everything you're doing on the advertising front will be more effective because you have been working on your messaging, your offer, how you communicate forever. Now for a year, every single day, so that when you transfer that to something else, advertising as an example, you have that skill foundation that will serve you really well as you scale. So I do think social is a great platform, but again, the key is that we want to be using it as opposed to it using us. And I do think that for the average person who's not a business owner, I'm like, why would you ever have Instagram? Like, I think it would suck the soul out of your body. But if you're a business owner and you're going to use it for business purposes, it's one of the most effective things we can do, right? It's going to build our audience, build our following, add goodwill to the marketplace. I just think it's a great platform when it's used properly. So let me just finish off with a couple nuggets here. So first and foremost, you talked about kind of not knowing what to post, et cetera. Like, listen, most people get frustrated because they open up a Google Doc and it kind of looks like this, just like a blank, right? So what we want to have is some type of, runway where we can get to the end or close to the end product a lot faster. So what we've done is we've used AI to facilitate this. I don't know if I shared this with you at Healthpreneur Live, but most of the stuff that we post on Instagram is AI generated. What I mean by that is not like the videos, but the captions. And that means that I'm not the one writing it for the most part. And the reason we're able to still create captions that are in my voice that kind of sound like me is because we have a series of prompts. We call it the AI Content Genie that essentially takes my voice and frameworks, and then we can run it through ChatGPT-4, and it gives us something that is 80% good enough. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good starting point. So instead of staring at a blank screen being like, what the hell do I write? It's like, here's the framework, throw it into ChatGPT. 5 seconds later, it's giving you like, shit, that's actually really good. I change this up a little bit, maybe change the first sentence, and you can make these small little tweaks so that your time in the creation process is more in the editing and massaging process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's allowed us to create a volume of content at a much greater level in a fraction of the time. I'm talking about creating a post in like 10 seconds. So, from start to finish, maybe a couple minutes instead of a couple hours. And what that's allowed me to do, what this could allow you to do over time, is that I don't need to be the one typing all the stuff and posting it on Instagram, right? We have team members now that can do that, but it still comes from me because what's happening is we've trained the AI with our content and our frameworks. And then through that lens, it spits out stuff relevant for us, just like it can for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't even know if I'm not going to draw this. This is supposed to be a roadmap. It's really helpful if you have a plan of exactly what to post on a daily basis. And I say daily basis because I do think that we should all be posting and adding value every single day. If you want to stand out from everyone else, we got to do things that most people are not willing to do. So if we look at this as a daily calendar, every single day we should be posting value, adding value. Question is, what do we post on those days? And so what we have is we have a process called SSS, the Social Authority Selling System, which basically shows you exactly what to post on every single day. And it's not the same type of content. The big thing that, again, I want to hammer home here is connect, don't just create content. So we have a number of frameworks, about a dozen or so for different types of posts. So we have a value add post, we have a kryptonite post, we have a signature story post, motivation post, crowdsourced content. We have about 12 different frameworks that allows us to kind of almost play like Twister, or like the mixture game where you kind of like move your body all over the place. Because if we can give more, if you think of like Everett and what you've shared up until this point, there's probably like 10% of the true Everett that you shared. But if you have different frameworks and angles that people can see you and your world through, it gives them more spectrum to see what you're all about. And it's also going to appeal to different people who may not resonate as much with one type of content compared to something else. So having a map or a plan in place, like a content calendar of knowing, okay, on Mondays, I'm going to post this, Tuesdays, I'm going to post this, just makes your life a whole lot easier. And then the final piece with that is obviously, okay, well, what does the motivation post look like? Cool. Well, here's the framework. Here's how it starts. Here's the middle piece. Here's how it ends. And so we have these templates that initially before AI, we were using and kind of manually filling in. But with AI, what we do is we simply use the template with a prompt, we put it into ChatGPT, and now we have the framework of the motivation post or whatever it is, put it to ChatGPT, and instead of us taking an hour to write the thing, it takes us 2 minutes. And so that's been our process. And that's kind of what it all looks like. So all of this to say, in terms of like actionable steps you can take from this is think about what's one thing I can post every single day. If you make the commitment to just posting something every single day, you'll be further ahead than most people. And within that is how can I add a little bit of variety to what I'm posting? So not just like the how-to stuff, but maybe it's a motivation piece, maybe it's inspiration, like whatever, you want to share. We don't even have to overthink it. Just share something that's going to be valuable, that gives people an insight into who you are. And that's really what we encourage our clients to think about is not overthinking the content, but just sharing stuff that's going to be useful for someone else or inspiring to them. And in time, they will start to see you as a thought leader. They will start to see you as someone in your space who is a sage because you're sharing your ideas, your thoughts. And the more you do that, the more you're able to clarify and articulate what that is and the more powerful it becomes. So does that help as a starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So from everything we've discussed, what's kind of one nugget you can take from this conversation and move forward with starting today or tomorrow?
Well, just the idea of putting something out every day, do it, and it'll get easier and it'll get better. And focusing on making that deposit of the goodwill, that resonated really well, and I can do that.
Love it, man. Yeah, if we were having this conversation a year from now and you did that every day, promise you the outcomes would look a little bit different. So
great.
Cool.
Well, I'm starting at 0, so
there you go, man. We all started at 0, right? Every master was once a disaster. It's all good. Helpful?
Very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Everett.
I appreciate it, Yuri.
Do you want to know exactly how to get clients from social media? I'm going to show you the exact social media traffic secrets that no one else is talking about. And actually, this is something I've never shared publicly before.